all you've known for 6 months. You're trying to figure out a way to be the best in the world at what you do. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, it's over. What do you do now? How do I work myself back in the house?
That was always the best. You got to reintroduce yourself.
Guaranteed monster fight the first week the season's over, because I'm going to come in and go, hey, honey, why do you do it like this? I think you should do this. And she's going to say, shut your damn mouth. I've been doing it like this for 6 months while you've been off playing with your buddies and playing football.
You are exactly where you need to be with Fitz and Whit. Feels good to be here with you, buddy. You are listening to the Fitz and Whit podcast. I'm Fitz.
And I'm Whit. And why did we go with Whit and Fitz again?
It's a better ring to say Fitz and Whit for sure.
I don't agree.
Presented by DraftKings, the crown is yours. And on today's show, Wildcard Weekend is set. 3 days, 6 games, 12 teams, one dream. Survive in advance. And Whit, we are going to Baltimore, baby. I cannot wait.
The AFC North, Daddy's back. I miss the AFC North, man. Cold weather, the whole atmosphere of the playoffs, Steelers, Ravens. Might even get a little snow, Fitz. And I'm kind of hoping we see some Fitz in fur this week.
Well, you know me very well. I'm thinking about going fur, but I don't know with the moisture in the air if I'm going fur or not. I will say this, though. I learned my lesson with the Cleveland game on the Snow Angels. Lay on your back.
Yeah, we got to improve that.
Don't do
technique.
it on your chest. Yeah, I'm from Arizona.
Face down was something, buddy.
But I'm going to probably get a trim on this beard here. My playoff trim. I know that everybody grows their beards out for the playoff, but I'll be doing the opposite. But very first time ever for me and for Amazon Prime, we have a wild card playoff game. This is historic and this is big stuff for us, Whit.
It's huge, Fitz. No, hey, listen, you got to stay with me, buddy. The anxiety, the energy, everything starts to increase in the playoffs, all right? So we can't mess this damn thing up. Follow my lead. You don't really know a whole lot about this playoff thing, but I got you.
Okay, I get it. But the last time this happened was Air Al. And the last time you said, follow my lead, you gave me a horrible review on everything I did wrong.
You pulled your camera out on a plane.
I know. But I'm just saying this. I looked up your record, and let's just say the first 7 times you were in the playoffs, you lost all 7 of those games. So I am going to be following Richard Sherman around. I'm going to be a wide-eyed puppy dog. I'm going to be so excited. You're probably going to have to, tamp down the excitement from me during the day, but I'm going to be more of a Sherm guy because I know he's got a little more experience than you at winning some of these things.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just looking at my reflection on Lombardi behind me. But anyways, on to your point.
Sorry. Okay, so let's set up this game real quick. We've got the Ravens on a 4-game winning streak. We've got the Steelers on a 4-game losing streak. It doesn't look good for Pittsburgh. The Ravens are rolling right now. But I think we can find a narrow path to victory for the Steelers. Speaking of underdogs, the Packers and the Eagles. What does that look like? The Packers are beat up. The Eagles are healthy. They're rested. Jalen Hurts is going to be okay. What does a win for Green Bay even look like? Those are the things that I think we're trying to figure out the answers to, and we have some good insights on those.
Yeah, and here's a question, Fitz. What does NFL leadership look like? Because I think we saw many different versions of leadership this weekend. Everything from Tyreek Hill to Mike Evans. I want to talk a little bit about that.
I love that. But here's another question that I would love to pose. The New England Patriots. Guess who I don't feel bad for? I got to see it. I was in the AFC East for 8 seasons. And guess what? Every single season I was in the AFC East, who do you think won the division? Yeah. So now that the Patriots are at the bottom and they're bottom feeders, I don't feel bad.
Bitter much? Come on, bud.
I don't know. I don't hold grudges.
Well, listen, there's nothing worse than missing the playoffs, Fitz. We both know that. On the last day of the regular season, just like the Bengals and the Falcons and the Dolphins, Fitz, you know it a little all too well. And I think there's a game that's been haunting you for about a decade you need to tell us about.
There is. Very emotional. 2015 New York Jets. We'll get into that. I think it's time for me to tell my story because it's been painful and it literally keeps me up at night still, just how difficult of a loss that was. But I don't want to bring the mood down. So first, we're making history. Amazon Prime history. Ravens Steelers, Saturday night in Baltimore. I have a question for you. We look at the lines every now and again, especially now, not as players, but as analysts. It's only 7.5 right now, which you're an AFC North expert. I thought it would be higher, to be honest, but is there a path to the Steelers winning this football game?
I think we've talked about this. My only path I can really see for this Steelers football team, is honestly they're going to have to turn the football over. I think of the first matchup. You look at this first matchup. The first time they played, the Ravens get a drive going, and all of a sudden Nate Herbig gets a hold of Derrick Henry from behind a strip fumble and on a run, and I think that to me is really the only way the Steelers have a chance to win this game. Because when you think of the Steelers, something about playing in Pittsburgh, I don't know what it is. You're anxious. You turn the ball over. You give them these opportunities. I mean, Cincinnati almost did it last week with the fumble off the guy's foot on the punt. It's like you give the game away for some reason. And I don't know if it's the energy of the place. It's what they've always done, that Steeler aura they have. But that's what you think. I think of these Baltimore Ravens, if they can not go in there and play tight, don't try to squeeze the football. Just go play, be yourself.
Yeah.
And if you don't turn it over, they're going to win this football game.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing, this offense the last 4 weeks for Pittsburgh has really struggled. And so it's like, what ignites this offense? What makes them go? It's throwing to George Pickens down the field. So I'm sitting there watching both of these games. If I'm the Ravens, if I'm Zach Orr, what kind of plan am I putting together against these Steelers? I'm looking at Russell Wilson. He's been really successful this year when he's had man coverage, when he's been able to see it before the snap. He's been able to pick up his matchup and throw it down the field. A lot of that has been George Pickens. Some of that's been Calvin Austin. But if I'm Zach Orr, I'm rushing 4. I'm playing varieties of zone. I'm going to have 3 different zones. I'm just going to mix little Rolodex, make Russell Wilson read the field, because the biggest thing with him right now, if it's not one-on-one and the ball's not coming out of his hand, the only thing he's throwing on time right now is the check down. So let's take the running back away. Let's be in zone. Let's try to confuse him a little bit. And then he'll run around. He'll take some sacks, which he's done, especially recently, or he'll try to get up out of the pocket and make some plays. The problem is the playmaking ability that he has showcased his whole career isn't what it once was. And so for me, that's what I'm doing if I'm the Baltimore Ravens. Don't give them the ability to have a spark to throw one of those balls down the field. And I wouldn't be surprised, because the Steelers are reeling on offense right now. We see a little bit of Justin Fields. Just to throw him out there, just to provide some sort of spark, because they have to make something happen early in this game, whether it's what you said, a crazy turnover, the only way the Steelers know how to do it, off somebody's foot or something wild, off a helmet, a batted ball, or they've got to generate some sort of big play on offense, because right now, vibe check, pretty low in Pittsburgh right now.
It's low. It is low. And Fitz, I think that's the thing to me when you brought up Zach Orr. I think that sometimes when we get into these seasons and we think about who the Baltimore Ravens were to start the season, the close loss against Kansas City, and then they kind of get going and everybody's going, man, you know what? They lost just by a toe against the Kansas City Chiefs, but they look like one of the best teams in the NFL right now. And then they kind of have a little lull, and defensively they're really struggling. I think that Thursday night game we had with them, where Cincinnati tore them up offensively. They won the game, but it was an absolute shootout. And you're saying, you know what, this team is so special, but what are they going to do about the defensive side of the football? And then I think you got to commend Zach Orr. You look at it, since week 11, they made some significant changes. They moved Kyle Hamilton to the free safety position. And he says, hey, listen, I wanted to kind of, stabilize the positions of some of these secondary guys. I don't want Kyle popping around everywhere playing all these different positions. He's our leader. He's the smartest guy we have on defense. Mentally, he gets everybody aligned and taken care of. And I kind of think of what Cooper Kupp almost is for a Rams offense, and you look at that wide receiver group, it's kind of how he addressed what Kyle Hamilton is to his secondary. I want him back in the middle of the field, directing the defense from that position. And since that point, they've been one of the best defenses in the NFL. They've barely given up over 200 yards, I think, one time since they made this change.
Yeah.
They have dominated defensively, and that to me is what makes you think about this Ravens team in a whole different light, because all the talent and ability they have offensively, they're right there with the Philadelphia Eagles as far as talent, offensive line, skill positions, all of it.
It's the lingering question of Lamar in the playoffs. Can he do it? And it's going to be there until he actually does it, right? We think about last year and Todd Monken and them not sticking with the run game. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to go away from it this year with Derrick Henry. I think he's a big shadow on the sideline and a nice reminder that he needs the ball. He gets better and better as he gets more carries throughout a game. But there's no excuses this year for the Ravens. They've peaked at the right time. They have Lamar, who's playing his best football. They have Derrick Henry. Todd Monken has been great all year long. There's no excuses to not see them in the Super Bowl this year with the way that they're playing right now.
Well, that's Saturday night. Our pregame show is going to start at 7:30 Eastern, and it's only on Amazon Prime, baby.
Yeah, so we talked about 3-6 in the AFC, a little Ravens, Steelers. But what about my Bills? The 2 seed, it was up in the air for a while. Who are they going to be playing? Was it going to be Cincy? I know you were holding out hope. Well, the Chiefs took care of that one. The Broncos, the Broncos are in the playoffs, and they had a game versus a JV team to get in, but they've deserved it. They've played well all year. Let me just say this. This game's Sunday, 1 p.m. The Bills are favored by 7.5. If I'm a Bills fan, I'm sitting in Orchard Park right now thinking about this game. You're thinking it's going to go one of two ways. And the first way is this is going to be a blowout. We're going to get on them early. We might have some weather. The fans are going to be crazy. The crowd's going to be into it. And the Bills are going to overwhelm the Broncos and Bo Nix. That's one path. And the second path is by halftime, the game's close. Maybe they're running the ball well, even though they haven't all year. Maybe they've had a few fluky plays down the field, some scrambles by Bo Nix, and the game is close. And at the end, it's going to come down to situational football by Sean Payton and by Sean McDermott. That makes Bills fans nervous. So right now, I think the blowout is kind of what everybody sees happening, but I know in the back of their minds, this is Buffalo. Things happen that are bad to Buffalo fans. That's the concern in this game, is that it's close and it's Sean Payton against Sean McDermott.
This is why I know you love your Bills, because you just went on both ends of the spectrum real fast there. And I can tell you've already contemplated both many times. And that's the concern right here, Fitz. Yeah. You're already wondering, could this be a blowout or could we get edged out at the end? And I think that's the concerning part for the Bills, because when you think about how this matchup sets up, you got one of the best defenses in the league this year in the Denver Broncos. Yep. You're possibly going to have some weather, which, yes, have the Bills played well in those situations, but guess what? The Denver Broncos playing a lot of cold weather as well. So that doesn't necessarily say that that's a favorite for you and that something falls in your favor. So You got great defense against the Buffalo Bills, and then you got a young quarterback who we've seen has these, you want to call them, bipolar moments. One moment he looks like a rookie, and then the next you're like, oh my gosh, did he just make that throw in Cincinnati, running out to his right and airmailing one in the back of the end zone for a touchdown to tie the game up?
Yeah.
Yes, he did. So in a great offensive line that can protect him. To your point, for the Broncos, it's really, if we get some running game going, we know we can protect our young quarterback, and we know we can play with great defense. We know that leads to success in the playoffs. So I can understand why your Bills are a little nervous. But for you laid out two scenarios. Which one are you more convicted in you think is going to happen?
Well, I'll say this. Bills fans, when there's a lead by 3 touchdowns, there's still the feeling of it's not over. No, it's not over yet.
That's
wait,
just being a Buffalo Bills fan.
Just being a Bills fan. It's the life that I'll say we live. But with Josh Allen, that's become a lot more crystallized and a lot better, although still like the Kansas City game, 13 seconds, that's always going to kind of live in the back of your mind. However, I'll say this. I like the matchup for the Bills, and there's a couple reasons why. One, Denver is very effective at getting after the passer. They are, but that is the strength of the Buffalo Bills. That's the strength of Josh Allen. He hasn't been sacked much this year, and when you put pressure on him, he's either going to get the ball out of his hands or find ways to avoid it and make plays downfield. And number two, another strength for the Broncos on defense is Patrick Surtain. And there's not really a guy. I mean, is he going to follow anybody on the Bills? I don't think so. Like, he doesn't need to lock one particular guy down because the ball gets spread around so much. And then the last thing and the X factor is Josh Allen and his legs. And you saw it all year long. When the games mattered, what happened? He ended up taking off. When they didn't matter, he'd spread it around, he'd throw it, he'd check it down. But when the games mattered, I'm thinking about that play against Kansas City at the end of the game. I'm thinking about some of the runs that he had in the Detroit game. He uses his legs. We're in playoff football, which I would argue weather really favors the Buffalo Bills because of who their quarterback is. I think this one's going to get out of hand early, and I'm hoping
I like it.
I'm hoping it gets out of hand early because the Buffalo Bills, I'm already looking ahead to the next week, which you're not allowed to do as a player, but you can do as an analyst. that game now being set up with the Ravens is going to be enormous. And maybe me and you can fly out and go to that game. We'll see.
I'm with you, bud. I'm in for that one. I think there is, a big challenge here because I think the Bills are thinking about that game. I think that's a reality. They know that team, the Baltimore Ravens, dominated them earlier this year. And in this game, I think the only concern I would have, and I agree with you completely of how this game should play out, is what has Josh Allen done so well this season that's really allowed this entire
Protected
team
the football
to take that next step? Exactly.
Yes.
And it's the playoffs. You're anxious.
Right.
You want to get the game. You want to dominate them from the jump. Can he stay calm? Can they stick to the plan, running the football, relying on that offensive line the way they have this year, and then Josh being Josh when he needs to be? But will he get ahead of himself and try and force the football? That could be the only thing that gets in their ways. Outside of that, I think the Bills dominate this one.
Yeah, I do too. And to the point of protecting the football and running the football, let's turn to the NFC right now. That sounds like the formula that the Eagles have had all year long. But the Eagles host the Packers. We've got the Bucs hosting the Commanders, which I can't wait to watch that game. And then we have your Rams hosting the Vikings. I guess they're my Rams too, although it was in St.
Come on, we were both Rams.
So many doubts about this Vikings team after what we just watched on Sunday night. They weren't just beaten by the Lions, Whit. They looked like they didn't even belong on the field with the Lions. What about Minnesota was exposed in Detroit on Sunday night? And are the Rams, look, we had the game where the Rams beat Minnesota, but are they built to capitalize on whatever the hell we saw Minnesota do on Sunday night?
Yeah, I mean, you think about this matchup. We've obviously seen this game already with the Vikings-Rams earlier this year on our own TNF, and the Rams handled business. But you look at it, we just said we love to look at these lines as analysts. The Vikings are road favorites, so obviously people think they can go in there and win. My question is really when you look at this Vikings team, Fitz, and you talk about Sam Darnold and them last week, we said they got dominated, but I kind of thought watching that game, the Vikings were getting lots of opportunities. They're getting down the red zone, and they just couldn't take advantage of them. What do you think was going on with Sam the other night? Because it hasn't been something we've really thought about, and all of a sudden he looked almost to me a little afraid to pull the trigger at times because there were some plays where it looks like he's got the opportunities if he just trusts himself.
Yeah, it was a big stage. It was for the bye. It was for the number 1 seed, and it just didn't happen. I'm not overly concerned with some of the red zone stuff because when you sit and you watch it, there's some guys that he missed. There's some scheme stuff they can do better, yes. But the concerning thing for me, Sam was so good against the blitz all year long, but then you look at it and he wasn't really blitzed all that much. And I think maybe some of it was the early success. Some of it is how dangerous those receivers are. But what did Detroit do? I mean, the blueprint they put out there is blitz him and then blitz him again and keep coming after him and keep getting after Sam and getting in his head. We go back and he's moved so far away from the I'm seeing ghost thing back when he was with the Jets. But you saw a little bit about that during the game on Sunday. You're talking about being gun shy and all those things. Like some of those demons were coming back to Sam where he wasn't finding the open guy and he was a little skittish in the pocket and he was bothered by the pressure. And so, is that something that the Rams are going to look at? And better than I do with their defense, are the Rams going to be able to dial those things up and get after Sam? Is that going to be something that they're going to want to do after looking at that game on Sunday night?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You really look at this Rams season and when it turned around after the bye, Chris Shula, first-time defensive coordinator, a really young defense and a young group of pass rushers that have done nothing but get better and better as the season's gone on. And it really has turned into an amazing draft class by Les Snead and the Los Angeles Rams. When they came out of that bye week and we had their game, that was one of the things they did. They had changed in the deep. They said, hey, you know what? We're not going to sit back and just try to rush with a few guys and play coverage because we're not good enough defensively to do that right now. We're going to bring more pressure. And you saw the success they really had in that game against the Vikings, being able to slow them down because at that point, the Vikings were rolling. So I look at it as, is that going to be something we're going to see again this week? And then also to me, I always think it's dangerous. And Fitz, I think you have to put the playoffs into different categories. In the first round, wild card weekend, when you're playing against a team, just like I said with Bo Nix against the Bills, young players who are excited to be there, you can get one or the other. And I think if you're the Vikings and you're about to face this young pass rush group of the Rams who are excited to have the opportunity, they just rested Matthew Stafford. They rested their vets on the offensive side of the ball. so that they can load up and give you the best shot they got this week. You got to be a little nervous about the way the Rams can possess the football with time of possession, just continuing to drive the football, keep it in their possession, and then can they conquer in the red zone? Because that's really what the Rams' Achilles heel has been, is if they can score touchdowns in the red zone, they're a tough team to beat, and then get after you with this young defense.
Yeah, but this is what I want to ask you about, resting the guys, and then losing that game and, obviously falling behind Tampa and having to play, the Vikings, whoever's going to lose that NFC North matchup. So they're playing the Vikings. That seems to me like it was a tougher path. I still am not convinced that was the best decision. And then if they come out and lay an egg in this game, he just, McVay opened himself up for criticism. So I'll ask you, having been in this situation before, do you think McVay knows his guys better than anybody, but resting your guys when your offense really wasn't playing that well the last few games before going out and playing now the NFC North loser, the Minnesota Vikings, was it the right move for them?
I think for me, you have to be committed to who you are. I think for some coaches, yes, maybe that's their strategy, that you leave the guys out there and you keep playing how you're playing. I think when you look at the Detroit Lions, when you look at some of these teams that were rolling and playing as well as they were, Dan Campbell had that decision the week before against the San Francisco 49ers leading up to this game. He said, let's just keep playing how we're playing. I think in Sean McVay's world, you got Matthew Stafford, who played behind a beaten up offensive line all season long. They had guys in and out of the lineup, continued to have that the last few weeks. He has taken a toll. He's not getting any younger. You need him fresh and ready to go. You look at Puka, the injuries he's played through, Cooper Kupp, the injuries he's played through. They've missed time this season. I think this game, people can look at it and go, all right, well, you needed another week to get better. I disagree. I think that, in my opinion, this isn't one of those situations where you had a healthy offensive line, a healthy quarterback, a healthy skill group, and you're just giving them a break for a week. I think they're resting guys up saying, look, these dudes have been playing through all kinds of crap all season. Let's let them just feel better, heal up for a week, and let's go give it the best shot we possibly got. We know we're inexperienced on defense. We know that we got some limitations on offense as far as being able to create explosives, but we're going to have to be at our absolute best when it matters. And that's what the playoffs are all about, Fitz, because we can talk about these matchups all we want. We can talk about who's good, who's what. Guess what? This is the difference in the playoffs. It ain't a season. It doesn't matter what you do next week. Who's the best in that 3-hour window? That's all that matters. And that's what the Rams are shooting for. We can be the best in the 3-hour window against the Minnesota Vikings. And that's what they played for. And that's what they're getting ready for and getting ready to do this week.
Yeah. And I'll say, too, the X factor is going to be Brian Flores. Rightfully so. His defense has played great all year. He's gotten all the praise and kudos and all those things. There's a lot of bells and whistles and confusing the quarterback. And I go back to Brock Purdy, saying to Brian Flores after one of the games, man, your defense is crazy. You know who doesn't think it's crazy? Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is going to have the ability to know what they're in, to get them in better plays when they're getting pressures, when they're doing all their stuff where they're confusing the quarterback, but really just ending up in a version of Tampa 2. Matthew Stafford's going to pick it apart. So that's going to be the X factor in this game. Can the line, when they rush 4, can they protect Matthew Stafford for long enough for him to pick apart these guys? But I don't see him having an issue against this Vikings defense, because that factor of confusion for the quarterback will not exist with a veteran like Matthew Stafford.
I agree. That's why I think this is the matchup the Vikings probably didn't want to start the playoffs. Kevin O'Connell going back to Sean McVay in L.A., a guy that he came from. And I think that, you know what? He knows Sean knows him best. He also knows Brian Flores very well. So this is a tough matchup for them.
Yeah. And speaking of tough matchups, I don't know that this is an easy one. The Eagles get the 2 seed. They rested, which I think rightfully so. There was a lot of stuff about Saquon Barkley. Should he go for the record? I'm sure all the linemen wanted him to go for the record, but I think that was the right thing for them. Jalen Hurts, obviously, another week where he just gets to, heal up from that concussion. They're playing against the Packers, or hosting the 7th-seeded Packers, who lost to the Bears, and they played their guys. Yeah, Jordan Love goes down. Watson, unfortunately, has a knee injury. But the Packers were hot. They were looking great. And then they've kind of fallen off the face of the earth the last few weeks, unfortunately.
Yeah, it turns out, Fitz, you need an elbow to play quarterback in the NFL. I think
well,
it's a big deal.
It is. And I hope it doesn't linger. I think we saw it with Josh Allen. What it looked like was the funny bone, right? It looked like he got hit on the funny bone.
Exactly.
Now, the concerning part was they weren't doing anything on offense. And then he gets out with the funny bone injury, Malik Willis comes in, they go down the field and score. So to me, that was a little bit concerning in that Jordan Love was struggling. But I think what that drive showed, who are they? They're going to be able to and need to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. And then LaFleur has to create advantages in some of that play action through the pass game to get it to his athletes on the outside. The Christian Watson injury hurts, but they're deep at receiver. They've got a really good young receiving core. This game's going to come down to, can Jordan Love make the plays? And I think if you're a Packers fan, you're a little bit nervous about that. From what you've seen all year, he has made the plays in some instances. He hasn't in others, but there have been a lot of games where he hasn't had to because they've run the ball so well. Well, it's going to be interesting. You talk about this Eagles defensive line a lot and how much they've improved and the dogs they have up front, but I don't know that they're just going to be able to line up and run the same plays that they've been running recently down the Eagles' throat because I just don't see it happening.
No, I don't think this is going to be one of those games where they can say, all right, it's just going to be all Josh Jacobs and he's going to carry this offense. Yeah. Jordan Love's going to have to make some plays. But then on the other side of it, Jalen Hurts has been out a few weeks. He comes back. What are we going to get out of that, right? So you've been out with the concussion. I think he's going to be able to clear protocol, I would guess, by now. But yeah. When you set out like that, Fitz, this late in the year, sometimes just the feel and the vision and just playing the game a little bit, you're a little rusty to start. So I think this Packers team, to me, when you look at the spread of this game, Eagles only favored by 3.5 at home, and think of how good they've been.
I know.
I think that people are a little nervous because you've said this for a while now. You thought this Packers team was a Super Bowl capable team.
I love the Packers.
They got quality play from Jordan Love.
Yeah. No pun intended there. I absolutely love the Packers. I love this roster. But Jordan Love's going to have to step up and make some plays. He's going to have to make some big throws on third down. This Eagles defense has been playing exceptional. They really have. But I'm really looking forward to it, though, because Matt LaFleur's done a great job all year long. Yep. And then the other side of it, Sirianni, is funny because you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. You're becoming a fan. He's really growing on you right now. We've had some tough times with Sirianni, some of his antics and things, but you've really taken a liking to old Nick Sirianni this year, haven't you?
Yeah, I flash back to the flower press conference and growing a flower and all the different things that come out of his mouth in these press conferences. At times it irked me a little bit, but as you've talked to the players and you get to know the guys in the locker room and you get to kind of get a feel for guys who've played under him, and you see the success that can't be argued with, how successful he's been as a head coach. Here's the thing. As a GM, Howie Roseman's going to get a lot of credit for the talent he's been able to assemble. But we can look across the league, Fitz, and there's a ton of teams with talent. And we'll touch on the Tyreek situation later, but it's hard to manage all those guys at the same time. Yeah. Sometimes putting all that talent in a room and saying, hey, head coach, here you go. You got two great receivers. You got a running back who wants the ball all the time. You got a quarterback who wants to be dynamic and do both. You got an offensive line that's a great offensive line, but they also want to be known for what they're known for, running the football. And you talk about the talk they had after the bye week earlier this season that we weren't running enough and the impact it's had on that team. But that also means A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith aren't getting the touches they want. So you're managing all those relationships and keeping everybody's confidence and belief in what the ultimate goal is to go to a Super Bowl, all at the same time of trying to say, all right, what's the best way to attack teams? What's the best way for this team to win in particular this season? I think he's done a heck of a job, and I think you continue to see, even through the A.J. Brown thing, when he reached out and said, we need to improve the passing offense. What do they do the next week? They throw him the football. They come out and have a dominant performance. So to me, we've seen a lot of teams splinter in those situations. We saw the Eagles get better. And that's what makes me feel like Nick Sirianni, you can say what you want. Maybe your press conferences, you laugh at him, you think it's a joke. You don't really understand where he's going with things. But you got to respect the product that continues to be showing up on the field. And can this Eagles team get back to the Super Bowl and win it?
Yeah, and another one of those questions, McVay rests his starters and Saquon gets rested, right? And that was a Sirianni decision along with Saquon to say, look, this is the Super Bowl we're looking at. The records are great, yes, everything, but we want to win a Super Bowl, and we're talented enough right now with this team to go win a Super Bowl. So, Nick Sirianni, we'll see Saquon with a week's worth of rest, his body to heal up a little bit. I think that was absolutely the right move, but these are the kind of moves that they don't work out that you get questioned as a head coach, and he's going to have those questions obviously in Philadelphia. If they lose, it's all going to point back to resting Saquon, resting the guys when they were hot. But such is the life of a head coach. You got all these Monday morning quarterbacks. So That part's going to be interesting for Sirianni as the playoffs go on. But look, you've been touting these Eagles for a long time, man. I am finally a believer, but I do think this game's going to be a bloodbath, and the NFC in general, it's going to be tough. I mean, Detroit certainly will be the favorite, but there's a lot of good teams and matchups coming up in this NFC playoff race.
I love it. I just think eventually these Detroit injuries are going to matter. This Philadelphia Eagles offensive line and the D-line, I just think it's a factor, Fitz, and I think we're going to find out in the next few weeks why I really believe in them, because I think this is when it's going to matter. This group's ability to pass protect and run the football with Saquon Barkley, it's a separator. And this first week of the playoffs is the one to me that can get the most turbulent as far as who might win or lose because of some of these things that happen, the nerves. But when you get into that next week, it's the cream of the crop. Who rises up and says, you know what, we want to be Super Bowl champions, and start to show you they're built of that kind of metal. Hey, football fans, there's only a few short weeks left in the season, and we're getting some exciting wildcard games to look forward to. Get in on the action right now with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm going to take Baltimore this weekend. Fitz?
And I'm taking Buffalo. Surprise, surprise. They're offering all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5. Don't let this slip away.
DraftKings has been the #1 place to bet touchdowns all season long, and the NFL playoffs aren't keeping them out of the end zone. They're going all in with a $2 million in bonus bets up for grabs every game day during the NFL playoffs. Here's how it works. Place a $5 pregame bet on any offensive player to find the end zone. And if they have the longest rushing or receiving TD that day, they're the king of the end zone, and you win a share of $2 million in bonus bets.
Who are you going with, Whit?
You know what? I think saying that, I'm going to go Saquon Barkley.
Wow. I'm going to go Nico Collins. DraftKings Sportsbook is crowning a king of the end zone every NFL game day. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Fitz and Whit. That's code Fitz and Whit to compete for a share of $2 million in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
While we're on that, let's talk about this 3-6 matchup in the NFC. Washington Commanders,
baby.
Tampa Bay Bucks. We could call it the Fitzpatrick Bowl. I mean, your Commanders' stay wasn't long.
It was very short.
It was there.
14 plays maybe, but yeah. Two of my former 15 teams right here, but I would consider myself more of a Tampa guy than I would a Washington guy. Spent 2 years in Tampa, still have some buddies on the team. And I'll tell you what, you want to talk about quarterback matchups in the playoffs. I mean, I cannot wait for this one. Baker has had the best year of his career. He's been unbelievable. I go back
Shout out Liam Cohen.
And shout out Liam Cohen for the job he's done. Bucky Irving coming in, Chris Godwin getting hurt, them having to go a couple games without Mike Evans as well and trying to stay afloat. But I point to one moment in that last game where the Tampa's got to have it, right? And they're not playing very well. They've got to win this game. Not sure if Atlanta's going to win or not. And so they're playing against the Saints, not playing very well, going to halftime, and they're down. And what does Baker do on the first third down of the second half? He takes off and runs, and he doesn't hook slide. He goes after
no slides,
somebody.
Fitz.
No. And then what did he do? He stepped over the guy. This is what I love too, and you're going to love it. The offensive line, the guy gets up and pushes Baker. Baker does a little bit of what I did back when we were in Cincinnati and kind of walked to the sideline as a fight broke out. But he knew he had to rally the troops, and he understands how to get his guys going. And he made it a point. I promise you that was intentional. Okay, I'm going to take off and run. I'm going to put my shoulder down. I'm going to step over this dude. He's going to get in my face, and Tristan Wirfs is going to come over here, and I'm going to wake up this football team. And that, to me, is the X factor with Baker. He's so special. Statistically, he's been great, but those guys want to play for this dude. And, to the other side of it, this LSU kid, your buddy Jaden Daniels on the Commanders, that's been the franchise-changing moment for them. These guys think they have a chance in every game because of this rookie quarterback.
Offensive Rookie of the Year or what?
There's no doubt he's the Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Got to be.
Now, I'll just say, too, like Brock Bowers' historic year, unbelievable, broken records and everything, has done a great job. But the meaningful games that Jaden Daniels has played and performed in at the end of these games as well, the fact that he has completely changed this franchise and turned them around to now what's going to be a perennial contender in his rookie season, and has made a believer of not just all of the fans, but all the dudes in the locker room that are with him.
Yep.
I think there's no doubt he's the offensive rookie of the year.
When you talk about the impact that Jaden Daniels had on an entire franchise, the entire organization, their mentality, everything's changed because of his existence. And then also, I'm a huge proponent. I've always said this. I always have a tough time with giving guys lots of accolades when their teams don't accomplish things, because the truth is, you can say what you want, playing in these big games, in these massive moments, in a game that matters to win a division, in a game that matters to get in the playoffs, and you're in prime time, and people want to see you. Can you be at your best in this moment where all their eyes are upon you, and you're able to show up and do it? You get more credit. You earn more stars to me when you're able to step up in those moments. And that's what really separates Jaden Daniels to me in this rookie class, in that he's been at his best when his team is literally laying it all on his shoulders and saying, can you find a way to win this game for us? No different than he did a couple weeks ago to get them in the playoffs. His ability to do that, to me, is what's really separated him as that rookie of the year guy. And I look at this matchup, it's a scary one. A lot of times, you even brought up Sean McVay resting his guys, and it's like, oh, you could have had the Commanders in the first round. I don't know. I think the Commanders are actually a really dangerous team because of Jaden Daniels' ability to just ad-lib and make plays with his legs and do everything he's shown his ability to do. Is that he's kind of a wild card in that sense of, you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of him sometimes. And so I think his special ability in this game is the only reason that when I look at them against Tampa, I say the Commanders have a chance, because I love this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team from an offensive perspective. This offensive line, shout out to Kevin Carberry. He's done an amazing job. He was my offensive line coach my last year in LA when we won the Super Bowl. He's now Liam Cohen's offensive line coach in Tampa. They have done a tremendous job. Bucky Irving has come alive in this offense. He's a guy that we pointed out early in the season. I told you I loved watching some tape of. Wow, to see his star grow. If you remember, Fitz, he fumbled the ball at the end of our game, the Falcons-Bucks game, to really give the Falcons the chance to make that comeback. So what a growing moment for him. Liam Cohen texting me, hey, man, this kid's going to grow from this to where he is now as a guy who's like a centerpiece of this offense now. I think it's really cool to see. I think the Bucks are a scary team in this NFC, Fitz.
Dude, they're both scary. And one of the reasons why is they both put up points. Right. If you can
score points in the playoffs, you got a chance.
You got a chance versus anybody. And so both these teams have showed that they can. Yeah, they've both been inconsistent at times, but the way both of these quarterbacks are playing, it's scary. And then the other thing, vibe check. We always love a good vibe check. How cool was the end of that game when Mike Evans, first of all, Bucky Irving scores the touchdown, and it was funny.
It broke my heart. I was like, oh no.
That's what Baker said. What'd you think? And I think Baker said he thought to himself, shit. Where it's like they're still competing to win. I think they were up 8 at the time after scoring that touchdown. But it's like they're still competing to win and go to the playoffs and all these things. But the biggest thing on everybody's mind was Mike Evans, and they get the ball back. And I don't know what your family room or wherever you're watching, what it looked like. But for me and my kids, so my 2 boys who are now 17, and actually Tate just turned 16 yesterday, they love Mike Evans. Mike used to always quiz them with Harry Potter quizzes, and they used to come into the locker room, and he was always so nice to them. So there are certain guys for my kids that are on their Mount Rushmore of human beings, of guys I played with. Mike Evans is one of those guys. And so when he got that catch, and it was great. Once they sent him in motion, you saw it was man coverage. You knew he was running a flat route. The guy went over the top, and it was like, yes. And the jubilation in my house, everybody standing up, fist pumping. I'm even getting emotional about it right now, how wonderful the moment that was. And even if you don't know Mike, even if you didn't play with Mike, I think that's the feeling for everybody because of how magical of a moment that was and how great of a representation of the NFL and the Bucs that he's been.
Yeah, I think Melissa said it best. My wife said right as it happened, she's like, God, I love football. Our entire family was jumping up and down on the couch, just – obviously such a cool moment because of the dude Mike Evans is, and really even just the year he's gone through, being injured, coming back, having an insane run. This Tampa team being able to get in the playoffs in this moment as well. That was a sick thing. It was one of those where when he caught it, I was like, oh no, he's going to fall. And then it's like, just get the yards. And he got him. And it was so sick, but you walk away from it, to me, those moments, and you go, man, this is what makes freaking football so special, because it wasn't just his moment. You look at that sideline, that team,
it's unbelievable.
Just It's awesome, man. It's awesome that we play a game like this, that obviously there's physical things that go on every week. There's guys fighting through adversity. There's all kinds of things that are going to be in your way. But then you see these guys rally around an individual and something that means something to somebody, and how much it becomes a team goal rather than an individual one. That's when you know you got a special locker room. You got a special culture. What a cool moment for not just Mike Evans, obviously awesome for him, but what a cool moment for that entire organization, because that showed you who they are. And watch out in the playoffs, because it's shown, just like you said, the moment for Baker, when they get this special energy about them, man, they feel like they can beat anybody at any time. And they've actually done it this year, because they actually have beat the Lions and Philly this season.
Yeah, they're definitely dangerous. And the other great thing about that Mike Evans moment is what got lost in it is his bonus that he got too, which is $3 million or whatever it was.
Man.
But at that point, it truly, that money meant nothing to him. It will mean something to him when it hits his bank account, but it was all about the 1,000 yards and the company that he's now in with Jerry Rice, doing it his first 11 seasons in the NFL. He's been a model of consistency his whole career. He missed the 3 games with a hamstring injury this year, and it was looking like, is he going to be able to do it? And he's really finished out the season great. Baker knew the assignment. I think Mike had 14 targets on the day. He knew how important it was. I think
early in the game they said, hey, you know what? This is important, but let's go win the game. Yeah. This isn't going the way we wanted to. Let's make sure we win it first, and then we'll worry about Mike.
Yeah, but Mike Evans, unbelievable class act, his story and kind of his childhood and everything he had to go through. For those that don't know, I mean, there's a couple articles, I think there's some documentaries if you read about it, but he's a 9-year-old kid, and his mom, there was some domestic abuse going on in the house, and his mom's brother came and actually stabbed, shot, and killed his father, who was abusing his mom, and he was in the house asleep at the time. But there's a lot of stuff that he's seen, his story, his journey, and now just the leader that he is in that locker room. He was one of those guys, there's not a lot of guys in my career. I'm not a big jersey swap guy or anything, but before I left Tampa, that was a guy I had to get his jersey, because he holds a special place in my heart. He holds a special place in my family's heart, as just how nice and wonderful he was. And obviously he's going to be a Hall of Fame receiver when it's all said and done. So really cool to see him have that moment. And that just gets me to leadership in general. And when you compare something like that moment where he got so fired up, he's not one to get that fired up about individual accomplishments, but it was a team accomplishment for him to be able to share that with his teammates, and now the vibe that they have in that locker room. And then you look at the flip side of it with what's going on in Miami, and they lose their game, and Tyreek Hill and some of the comments he made after the game. And even, look, it's going to come out, it seems like, that he pulled himself from the game. It wasn't an injury. McDaniel didn't know that he was out of the game until right before he started calling plays. And I think, Tyreek looked up at the scoreboard and said, I don't know. I think the season's going to be over for me. And that was a hard look when you compare Mike Evans, and obviously they're going to the playoffs, and Tyreek, and the disappointment of not making playoffs, but the way that they've shown themselves as leaders throughout the season.
Yeah, it's tough. When you make that decision and you're wearing a C on your chest, unfortunately, regardless of how it goes from here, even the comments after the game, it's something that lives with you, man, because the reality is I've always said this: when you wear that C in your chest, or when you're in a position of leadership, your degree of how you're judged is totally different. You're not one of the other guys, and you're not expected to act like the other guys. You're expected to act like a captain and a leader. And so really, for your message to be one, whatever comes out of how that situation was is clear. There wasn't a lot of great communication of why he was in or out of the game, both from him and from the head coach. And then after the game, the way he handled the press conference, I'm out of here, those kind of things. Like, man, if you're a captain of something, you've signed up to say, hey, I'm going to be the person who's going to stand in the front and lead for this football team. That's not how you handle things. And It's not the way you go about things. And unfortunately, it becomes a reflection of really your character as a football player. I'm not talking about as a human being. I don't know that much about Tyreek Hill personally, but as a football player and in a locker room, that is a part of your life, and that becomes a reflection of who you are. And you start people go down that road of, all right, you were traded away from the Kansas City Chiefs, and they went on to win a Super Bowl, right? You got your contract. Now you're in Miami. Here you are. This whole thing was, this is my team now, and I'm going to be the reason we'll be successful. And now at the first point of adversity here in Miami, you want to leave and walk away again. That becomes something that becomes your narrative. And it becomes tough to understand where you're going to fit and where you're going to be good, because whether you're getting paid the most money or whether you're not, you're going to continue to, if things don't go your way, demand to get out or demand to want change, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to fix this place. We are going to be better because I'm here and I'm a part of it. I'm going to be a part of the reason that this place is going to be better because I entered it and got here. I'm not going to let adversity change that mindset and demeanor. And so you've seen him kind of allow that to happen now. If he has to go to another team, it starts to become your story.
Yeah, and maybe he will, but you'll see. I mean, he's an unbelievable football player.
There's no doubt about that.
There's no doubt about that. He's probably, if not the most talented, he's in the top 5 in terms of talent in the NFL. But as you get older and your skills diminish, and that, factor of not being a great leader, not wanting to be around, as that continues to be where it is, you just see this disconnect, and then your career gets away from you. So I hope Tyreek finds his happy place. He's obviously still going to be very productive and going to be able to produce wherever he goes, but he also has to understand, that the window is shrinking a little bit for him. And, sometimes you keep thinking everywhere you go, they're the problem, not me, when, maybe you got to look in the mirror and figure out why it keeps happening to you.
This goes back to my caddy advice. You remember I told you this. I had a caddy one time tell me, we were having a conversation about this. And he said, here's one rule I kind of live by. He said, if 10 people tell you that somebody's an asshole, you should probably believe them. But if you have to convince 10 people that somebody else is an asshole, you're probably the asshole. So that's just the reality. But on the flip side of that, Fitz, I do want to say this. We talk about leadership and cultures and great environments. We just touched on Baker and Mike Evans and Tampa and theirs. I thought one of the other really cool ones over the last few weeks is Mekhi Becton, man, a guy who was a top draft pick in New York. It doesn't work out, injuries for whatever reason. You start to doubt yourself. We've seen this road in the NFL, the emotions and the life it is to exist and to play well and be there. And you just don't have your career start the way you envisioned from college. And then you end up in Philadelphia. You become the starting right guard, and they win their game to get into the playoffs and to win the division a couple weeks ago. And he's on the sideline in tears, and Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata are wrapping their arms around him, being like, dude, you did this. Like, you worked this hard to get here. You deserve it.
The best game on earth,
amazing.
Baby. Yeah.
Like it's just those kind of moments on the flip side is what makes this game so special. And I bring that up because I hope Tyreek can just take a minute and realize, man, those are the parts that make this game the most watched game, the most entertaining game, where our families are sitting in living rooms cheering for guys, even though we have nothing to gain from it, because fans love those moments where you get to be a human being, man. I've failed. I kept trying. I reset the pieces. And now here I am in this moment, in the joy of being a part of something bigger than just me. Man, it's one of the greatest joys in the world.
And on the heels of that leadership conversation, there's one other guy. We talked about him a little bit earlier in the year in this particular moment. So we had the Aaron Rodgers, Mike Williams red line stuff. But then we had Justin Herbert, and Quentin Johnson had some big drops in a game, and Herbert's up there at the podium. And they're basically wanting him to drag his receiver through the mud. And he stepped up and he said, look, we all make mistakes. We're going to need him later in the year. We're going to need the best out of this guy. He poured into him. I'm sure, in practice and everything else, there was more love given to him. And look what happens. The payoff on Sunday, he ends up having 13 catches, 180 something yards, a huge game for the Chargers, and hopefully that can carry into the playoffs as well. This is the one game that's not getting a lot of love right now, with the Chargers at Houston. What do you think is going to happen in this game?
Well, I think when you look at this Houston team, they won their division, but unfortunately through injuries and really just a kind of a letdown. And what we saw out of D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud last year, kind of been the opposite this year. Haven't handled some of those moments against really good teams very well. They've struggled against teams with winning records. And I just think that when you look at how the Chargers are built, they a league low points they allowed and 300 something points. I mean, they're a great defense. They're playing Jim Harbaugh kind of ball. They're going to run the football, play great defense, and possess it. I think that, to your point, a guy like Quentin Johnson showing up, and a guy like Ladd McConkey, who this offense obviously has been centered around, you start to say, all right, now the Texans got to worry about another option besides just Ladd, and then they're going to run the football and possess it on the Chargers' hands. I just don't think offensively Houston could put up enough points to win this game. So I think the Chargers are going to handle it through a suffocating defense and running the football, time of possession, a real Jim Harbaugh type football win.
And then they'll get rewarded with playing the Chiefs the next week. So
yeah, good luck.
That'll be an interesting one to watch. We've been looking ahead and so excited about this wild card weekend, Whit, but we should take a peek back. There's a lot of teams that are now saying goodbye. The seasons have ended. There are no playoffs for them. I am very familiar with this. Now there are 18 teams that don't make the playoffs, 3 of whom fell short on the very last day. Whit, none other than your Bengals. Andy Reid wasn't going to let them into the playoffs. The Chiefs lost 38-0 to Denver. That tells you everything you want to know about Andy Reid and him not wanting to even sniff the Bengals in the playoffs. But what's your end of the season message to Bengals Nation after the season they had?
Well, I'll tell you what, Andy Reid does everything good. Even if he needs to lose a game, they lose it in a really good fashion, 38-0. But, when I talk about the Bengals, it's tough, man. I mean, when you sit there and go, all right, we got a quarterback who finished the season with the most yards, a receiver who won the Triple Crown, and a defensive end who led the league in sacks. But we didn't even make the playoffs. I think it's a tough thing to say, this is a great season. I think it's a great finish. But at some point, you've got to sit there as Zach Taylor and say, how do we fix the last 3 straight seasons of how we've started the year? Because, yes, all these things are positive. Great finish, guys. That's awesome. And, oh, man, the Chiefs blocked us from getting in. No, they didn't. You blocked yourselves because for the last 3 straight years, you've been terrible to start the season. You got to adjust camp. You got to adjust your philosophy in the first few weeks. Whatever that is, you've got to do something to address these issues because it cannot be the narrative again for this team. Now, what I do love, if I'm a Bengals fan, is regardless of whether you are a Lou Anarumo fan or a Frank Pollock fan or some of these coaches that they've already decided to let go, what I hated when I was in Cincinnati, and we did have that streak of, we went to some playoff games, we couldn't get over the hump, is we never made change. We never said, hey, you know what? We've got to find a way to be better. That means somebody might have to lose their job. That means somebody as a player, a coach, might have to come in here and fix it and help us fix it. I love seeing that Zach Taylor immediately says, you know what? We will be accountable and we're going to make changes. But now those changes, now you're in a situation as a head coach. Once you start making those changes, they got to work because then it starts to fall back on you.
You so run out of people to point the finger at.
you don't have anybody to point the finger at. So this next season, how they start the year and the way it goes is going to fall on Zach Taylor, and it really will tell the story of what is going to be possible of this Joe Burrow-led Bengals organization. How do they handle T. Higgins and Jamar Chase this offseason with contracts and how they move forward? This is a big year for Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think everybody's going to have their eye on that one. But what a year by Joe Burrow. I mean, kudos to him. It sucks he missed the playoffs, but I mean, just
insane, dude.
Insane. But listen, really fun to watch.
Those emotions are tough. You saw how emotional he was. Like you looked at the last couple press conferences talking about him wanting his guys back. And I mean, the other teams, the Falcons and Dolphins, also missed in the final week.
Yeah.
You saw Bijan Robinson emotional. You saw Tyreek Hill's obviously emotions about it. Fitz, you talked about this. You're going to share with us almost 10 years now.
You're
one of your most painful
emotional
memories. Come on, you got to tell us the story.
I know
about the time you missed out.
Well, 2015 Jets. The way the season started. If you remember, that was the year that Geno broke his jaw, and I got thrown into the starting position. And really, it was a veteran team, but it was kind of a team kind of at the end of their window. They hadn't played very well the year before. And so I don't know what the expectations were going into the year. We found ourselves at 5-5 in the beginning or the middle of the year. And then we reeled off 5 straight, and we're sitting there at 10-5, win and you're into the playoffs. And it wasn't just me who had never been to the playoffs. Brandon Marshall still, to this day hadn't been to the playoffs, but I think he's played the most games and never gone to the playoffs. So both of us We're holding on to this moment. We're at Buffalo, of all places, of course. And the Steelers are sitting a game behind us. If they lose, we're in. If we win, we're definitely in. And we get to the fourth quarter, not a great game. 19-17, we're losing to the Bills. We're driving down. We're in field goal range. We're inside the 20, and we call a double post. I throw a ball, it gets picked off in the end zone. And so it's like, oh no. Gets picked off in the end zone. Tough moment for me, but look, we still have time. They end up going on a really long drive. We get the ball, they kick a field goal. We get the ball down 22-17, I think with about 4 minutes left, plenty of time. Driving down, a 2-minute warning. There's a timeout, and there's a 3rd and 8 or 9. And I've got the decision to make. Brandon Marshall been doing a great job one-on-one, 3-by-1 formations, just eating it up on the backside. Do I want to throw him an out route, or do I want to throw him an out and up? I decide I want to throw him an out and up. Well, it takes a little bit longer than I thought. I get hit as I'm throwing it, and I'll never forget this. Ball's in the air forever, gets picked off. And Marcel Darius, who we were teammates in Buffalo, is apologizing to me after he hits me. He's like, dude, I'm playing the game. I'm trying, but he knew the gravity of the situation for me and how bad I wanted it and how bad I wanted to win that game. And then to add to that, we get the ball back, 22-17, 40 seconds left, maybe no timeouts. Not a great situation, but we had a play down the sideline. I threw it to Kimbrell Tompkins. It's in his hands, and then just at the last second gets knocked out. Heartbreaker. And then, of course, desperation, I throw another pick. So 3 interceptions on the last 3 drives in the fourth quarter, chance for us to go to the playoffs. And you want to talk about feeling the emotions in that locker room after the game. I just remember the moment I had with a bunch of different guys, but Brandon Marshall in particular, 2 guys that never in their careers ended up making it to the playoffs. We finished 10-6. Pittsburgh wins their game and ends up edging us out of the playoffs. Those are the moments you never forget. And a lot of them are great moments, and some of them are horrible moments like this that you go through and you try to come out the other side. And every time you go through a moment like that, at least for me, I think about my kids, and I think about, how do I want them to see me in that situation? How would I want them to react in that situation? Not an easy thing to face the fans, the coaches, the players after a game like that, a finish like that. But it's something that you builds your character and makes you stronger. So thank you for allowing my little therapy session there, Andrew. I haven't talked through that in a long time, but I appreciate it.
Hey, trust and vulnerability, buddy. You got to be vulnerable first to build that trust. So I appreciate you sharing it with us. Because, that's the thing. Fans get fired up. You get mad. You get angry. You want changes. But you got to remember, too, this is an emotional game that we put a lot into, players and coaches and everyone in that building. And those days after a loss like that, when the season's over, are so awkward. You don't know if people are getting fired. You don't know if you're going to be back. Everybody's assessing their injury situation, having their exit physicals. There's a lot of emotions involved in those days. Just trying to figure out getting back to normalcy. For all you've known for 6 months is from, 6 a.m. till, you go to bed at night. You're trying to figure out a way to be the best in the world at what you do. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, it's over. What do you do now? And who are you? And I know for us, you and I both had a lot of kids while we were playing. How do I work myself back in the house?
That was always the best. You got to reintroduce yourself.
Guaranteed monster fight the first week the season's over, because I'm going to come in and go, hey, honey, why do you do it like this? I think you should do this. And she's going to say, shut your damn mouth. I've been doing it like this for 6 months while you've been off playing with your buddies and playing football. And now you want to come home and tell me how to do something. You know what, babe? I'll back off. It is your house. It's your place. You're the GM, the head coach of this household. So I will step back out of the way. But I always wanted to insert myself, Fitz.
Yeah, that always happened more than once. But we did learn our lessons, and you do learn to just kind of sit back and fit in where you, or get in where you fit in. It's a really funny thing because you screw up bedtime, you screw up the routines. All of a sudden you're asking questions you haven't cared about for the last 6 months. So that reintroduction phase to your family is really funny. And then we'll end it with this quote by Rich Cimini, who he's a guy, a New York Jets guy in the media. And I always like the line that he said about, players, and no matter how much money you have, you're not leaving that last day with a Gucci bag. You're leaving with a hefty. You're throwing all of your stuff in that black trash bag, and you're bringing it home, and you're reflecting on the season and your relationships. And there's so many emotions tied into one. A lot of happy things, a lot of sad things because you didn't end the season the right way. But what a wonderful profession that we got to be in, and still, get to be around this game. It's been pretty amazing for both of us, and a lot of great memories throughout the years. A lot of black trash bags for me, a lot of moving around. Didn't really get to keep my stuff in lockers for very long, but that is just part of it, and it led me here
Such
with
is
you.
life.
I am so happy to be here, to be doing this podcast with you. This has been the Fitz and Whit podcast. We'll see you next week for a complete recap of Super Wildcard Weekend and some bold predictions in the divisional round. Top seed trouble? Ooh, what do you think? Don't rule it out. But that's for next time, Whit. We'll see you next week. Toodles!
Peace.